My grandparents came to America in 1903. They came through Ellis Island and settled in Elmira, New York. My father was a retired Navy chief, and my mother was a nurse. My first gym was in my basement. When I was 19 years old, that I actually came down to Gainesville, Florida to visit a friend. And my first day here, I needed a place to work out, and she had a brother who was a member of what was called the Steve Spurrier Health Spa. And I asked if I could work out with him, and I went over there, and when I was done, I went to the manager and told him I was in town for 30 days and asked if I could do a trade out with him. I would work for free and trade out for being able to work out whenever I wanted to. And I would work Wednesday nights, and I'd work all day Saturdays. At the end of the 30 days, when I was supposed to go back home to New York, I decided I'd stay for 30 more days and then go home at Christmas time. And I did. And when I got home, I was ready to go back to work, but the friend of mine who I was going to work with, who was a Mason, told me that it was just too freezing up in New York to work, and maybe I should go back down to that Gainesville place and come back at the end of March. That was actually the beginning of something, obviously, that would change my life.
My mom joined that gym, and she kept raving about this young fellow who was teaching her how to work out. And so I went down when my mom met Joe. That's the first time I met him. That led to a lifelong friendship. Joe must have slept on my sofa a couple times, because essentially he had just arrived from upstate New York. And of course, the rest is history. That club closed, and then Joe moved on to his beginning.
I was managing my first center after having 2 years of experience in the business, and then I learned how to find books that were inspiring when I was probably about a year and a half earlier. A book called The Power of Positive Thinking, which got me started on a path of thinking quite differently than I had ever thought before. And when I was 21 and ready to start managing this club, this new club, I decided maybe I should go find another book. I went to the bookstore and I found one called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I read the back side of it, and it really intrigued me, so I started reading it. It talked about, in order to be successful, you had to know the secret, and it kept repeating that throughout the entire book. And when I finished reading it, I realized what the secret was, and it was you simply had to know what you wanted out of your life. So I took a legal pad and I started writing a number of things down. But the very first thing on my list was, I will someday own my own health club in Gainesville, Florida, so no one is ever going to tell me where I'm going to live. And the second thing I wrote down was, I'll make the health club respected in the Gainesville community. Because back then, health clubs had a terrible reputation. They were always going bankrupt. And the one I was in was no exception. Over the course of the first 4.5 years I was in the industry, I worked for 6 companies that went bankrupt. During that period of time, I lived in closed down buildings, I lived in my car, I lived in health clubs that I worked in. I was totally broke multiple times. And it was probably when I got down to my last 12 cents that I found the book and read it and wrote my list. But after the 6th club went bankrupt, and understanding I'd been reading my list for years, and I read everything I wrote on that list every morning and every night, day after day, month after month, year after year. And when I was 24 and a half and the 6th company went bankrupt, I thought maybe this was my chance. And I took over that bankrupt club, and I started Gainesville Health and Fitness Center.
He called me up and said, "Bill, we're open for business tonight." So I went to Creekside Mall, and when I got there, there was a line of people out the front door, and Joe was at the door, and he still had our Steve Spurrier blue smock that he was wearing with a zipper up the front. He had a clipboard, and he was standing there taking down names and checks and putting them in his pocket, and that's how it all began.
Creekside Mall was actually the beginning of Gainesville Health and Fitness Center. I moved it from a previous location on Nurture Road to this place. And the original club, the entrance was right here. It was 2,500 square feet. Just to give you a clue, our lobby is more than 2,500 square feet at our main center. But this was the beginning of it all. And it led to a series of expansions. And there were things that occurred in the marketplace that made many expansions actually occur. Most members don't realize, back when we first began, the way health clubs were set up, they were open 3 days a week for men and 3 days a week for women. And then I saw this co-ed thing starting to occur where people, men and women, were starting to exercise together. So we started adding in some co-ed hours and then more co-ed hours. And we were infringing on the men's days, letting the women come in. Then eventually we started letting the men come in on some of the women's days.
The first day when Joe said we're moving to Creekside Mall, come to work, I was, again, everybody had left. I was the only employee still staying with him at that point out of the 2 or 3 that we had. And so I came to work in my leotard and my wraparound skirt, 'cause that's what we wore, and I walked into the mall, and if anyone knows, Creekside Mall is a circular area, like a park in the middle. And I walk up, and in the middle of the mall, there's all these chrome Universal machines. All of our equipment, our benches, everything was in the middle of the mall. And I'm like, okay, so we're exercising out here? And he goes, well, we're actually renovating, so we've got to keep everything here. My job was to make sure the equipment did not get rusty, that it all stayed good, that I answered people's questions, members coming and going, and that I was running around doing anything that anybody needed me to do.
Oh, and it was really fun because it was a very social occasion back then. I lived at the gym. I'd come early in the morning at maybe 5:30 and work out, and then come back in the afternoon for aerobics, and aerobics worked so choreographed then. They were much more free-spirited and just really fun. It was a really fun time. We were all young then.
Hey, one other thing that is a unique concept that Joe started was adding a work comp, physical ed, rehab center, attach it to a regular health club. That had never been done before. And it's obviously just, it's an excellent mix because we send people over here for physical therapy, and they go from there into the club, and they give them a free membership for so long a period of time to get them started. So there are a lot of perks here, and that's one reason that his membership continues to grow.
One of the things that I'd say about Joe's gyms, because you go elsewhere, you travel, you go to different towns. I'll tell you, and I speak to friends, it's really nice to come back home. It's nice always to come back home. But to know that we have a gym like this that is so clean, and I have a little bit of ADD, so I watch all these guys, and I don't know how you train them. I want them to come to my home, clean the grout, and clean the tops of machines, you know, so you don't have to worry about, you know, issues here.
My father was working out here. He was a member for a long, long time, and I was a student at the university, and he always talked about this place, but I never walked in it. And it was time for a summer job. He had encouraged me to check this out, and I remember walking in the very first time and being absolutely amazed at the way it looked, the professionalism of the place. It just, I was in awe, you know, the first moment I walked in.
So you learn what you learn hypothetically in college or from wherever else, but everything that I learned about how to actually do the job, I learned at Gainesville Health Fitness Center. I mean, I learned customer service, I learned how to train, I learned how to manage people, I learned how to hire, recruit, write all those manuals. I mean, when I took my trip with Andy and we came back, first thing Joe did was he was trying to sell the MedX then and had us write every single thing down, every operational thing. Well, I'd never sat down and wrote anything like that. So I learned to do all of those different ideas, but in reality. Like it was a lab, and Joe let us do it. Joe and Jan just gave us the ability to practice that. And now Andy and I have 8 locations. We just opened our 2nd location in Orlando.
Joe decided that we wanted to put new TVs up, just like we have in the club now, where people could watch them while they were working out. But it was in the old days, and we had our engineer design all these real fancy brackets, but we had to run all these cables. So we were over in the old club, which we were upstairs, and you had a long area between Request and our cafe at the time. So one Saturday morning, I'm in there, and I told him, I said, I'll take the project on, and I'll get it done. I'll get the cabling done and get everything done. And so one Saturday morning, I'm in there, and I'm stretching cable from one end of the building to the other, which was probably, oh gosh, a good 100 feet of cable, because he had to make cable runs. So Joe's in there, and he goes, what are you doing? And I told him. He says, well, here, let me help you. So the next thing you know, we're running sprints from one end of the building upstairs to the other end at the cafe, pulling cable as we do and cutting them. That's how we were making the runs. He was making a workout out of it.
Because of Joe, our whole family moved to Gainesville, Florida, and we've had everyone in our family here all these years, and it all stems back to Joe opening the health club, giving us the opportunity here, and I can't think of enough, and love Joe. Amen. Through the years, I haven't had to look ahead long distances. I get to a certain point, start getting new information, learning new stuff, and we figure out what the next thing is going to be. And that's been the entire progression of the whole business. Everything we've done was not like when I first started, I thought all the way out to where we are today. It's kind of like, you climb a mountain and then you look and you see the next mountain that's a little bit higher, and you climb that one, then because you have a better view, you can see the next one that's a little bit higher. And the way that I look at it is we'll just continue to keep finding what will make us relevant, how we can help impact people's lives to the best of our abilities, and continue to keep growing our people. Because that's really the secret to building a strong business, is having great people and helping them along to become super at what they do. And we'll continue to keep working on those things.